The sun was setting over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The Horizon Labs facility stood like a fortress against the horizon, its steel walls glinting faintly in the fading light. Inside, the hum of machines and the soft chatter of employees filled the air. It was an ordinary evening at the high-tech research center, where some of the brightest minds worked on projects that pushed the boundaries of science and technology. Among the bustling crowd, a man went unnoticed. His name was Jack Miller, and he was the janitor. Jack had been working at Horizon Labs for over 20 years. He was a quiet man, with salt and pepper hair and hands roughened by years of hard labor. Most people didn't even know his name. To them, he was just the guy who cleans up. Jack's job wasn't glamorous. He mopped floors, emptied trash bins, and wiped down tables in the break rooms. But he did it all with a sense of purpose, moving through the hallways with steady, deliberate steps. No one paid much attention to him, but Jack noticed everything. He saw the way scientists whispered nervously about their latest experiments. He heard fragments of conversations about classified projects, and he knew more about the facility than anyone realized. On this particular evening, a new face joined the team. Her name was Claire Bennett, and she was fresh out of graduate school. Claire was young, confident, and eager to make her mark. She had been hired as a junior researcher, and today was her first day. As she walked through the facility, she couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. This was where groundbreaking discoveries were made, and she wanted to be part of it. Claire spent most of her afternoon getting settled into her new workspace. She unpacked her things, reviewed the lab protocols, and introduced herself to her colleagues. By the time lunch rolled around, she was ready for a break. Grabbing a cup of coffee from the cafeteria, she sat down at a table and pulled out her notes. But as she flipped through the pages, she accidentally knocked over her coffee mug. The dark liquid spilled across her papers, soaking them instantly. "Oh no," Claire muttered under her breath. She reached for napkins, but before she could clean up the mess, someone else stepped in. It was Jack, the janitor. Without saying a word, he grabbed a cloth and started wiping up the spill. Claire watched him work, feeling a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. "Thank you," she said finally. "I'm such a klutz." Jack gave her a small nod but didn't say anything. When he finished cleaning, he handed her the now dry papers. Their eyes met briefly, and Claire felt something strange, a flicker of recognition, though she couldn't explain why. Jack simply smiled faintly and walked away, disappearing into the hallway. Later that night, the facility was quieter than usual. Most employees had gone home, leaving only a skeleton crew to monitor ongoing experiments. Claire stayed late, trying to catch up on her work. She was typing furiously at her computer when the light suddenly flickered. For a moment, everything went dark. Then, with a loud buzz, the emergency alarms blared to life. Red lights flashed throughout the building, and a robotic voice echoed through the halls. "Attention. Ghost protocol has been activated. All personnel are advised to remain calm and await further instructions." Claire froze, her heart pounding. What was Ghost protocol? She had never heard of it before. Around her, other employees looked equally confused. Some began whispering nervously, while others rushed to find answers. The doors leading outside slammed shut with a loud clang, sealing everyone inside. Panic spread quickly. People gathered in groups, speculating about what was happening. Was it a drill? A security breach? Or something worse? No one seemed to know. The automated voice continued its monotone announcements, offering no explanation beyond vague warnings to stay safe. In the midst of the chaos, Jack remained calm. While others ran around in confusion, he moved with purpose, heading straight for the main control room. Claire noticed him slipping through the corridors carrying a toolbox. Something about his demeanor caught her attention. Why wasn't he panicking like everyone else? And why did he seem to know exactly where he was going? Curiosity got the better of her, and Claire decided to follow him. Keeping a safe distance, she trailed Jack as he navigated the maze-like hallways. He bypassed locked doors with ease, using tools from his box to disable security panels. Claire's mind raced. How did a janitor know how to do that? Finally, Jack reached the control room. He glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then slipped inside. Claire hesitated for a moment before following him. She peeked through the doorway and saw Jack typing rapidly on a keyboard. Lines of code scrolled across the screen as he worked. "What are you doing?" Claire demanded, stepping into the room. Jack turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, with a heavy sigh, he spoke. "I'm not just a janitor," he admitted. "This place, it wasn't always about science. It used to be something else, a testing ground for experimental weapons. I've been here since the beginning." Claire stared at him, stunned. "What do you mean? What is Ghost Protocol?" Jack hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. "It's a failsafe," he explained. "Designed to activate when the system detects a threat, internal sabotage, or external attack. Once triggered, the facility seals itself off. Everyone inside is trapped until the threat is neutralized. And if it's not neutralized?" Claire asked, her voice trembling. Jack's silence was answer enough. Claire's mind reeled. Why hadn't anyone told her about this? And why did Jack seem so prepared? Before she could ask more questions, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Someone was coming. Jack quickly closed the programs he had been working on and motioned for Claire to hide. As the door creaked open, Claire held her breath, unsure of what would happen next. Whatever Ghost Protocol was, it was clear that Jack knew far more than he let and that their survival might depend on him. The footsteps grew louder as the door to the control room creaked open. Claire pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of sight. Jack stood calmly by the console, his face unreadable. A moment later, a man stepped inside. It was Dr. Alan Harper, the director of Horizon Labs. He looked around the room with sharp, suspicious eyes. "What are you doing here?" Harper asked, his tone cold and commanding. His gaze shifted between Jack and Claire, lingering on the open laptop on the desk. Jack didn't flinch. "I'm making sure everything is under control," he said evenly. "You know how this place gets when Ghost Protocol activates?" Harper's expression hardened. "This isn't your concern, Miller. Leave it to the people who understand what's going on." Claire felt her heart race. She wanted to speak up to ask Harper what was happening, but she stayed silent. Something about the way Harper looked at Jack made her uneasy. There was tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. "Understand this," Jack replied, his voice steady. "If we don't figure out how to shut down Ghost Protocol, everyone in this building is in danger, including you." For a brief moment, Harper hesitated. Then he shook his head. "Stay out of my way," he snapped before turning and walking out of the room. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Claire and Jack alone once again. Claire let out a shaky breath. "Who was that?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "That's Dr. Harper," Jack said. "He runs this place. Trust me, he knows more about Ghost Protocol than he lets on." Claire frowned. Why would he activate something like this? What's the point of trapping everyone inside? Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned back to the computer and began typing again. Lines of code scrolled across the screen as he worked. Claire watched him closely, her curiosity growing stronger by the second. "Ghost Protocol wasn't designed just to keep people safe," Jack finally said. "It was created to eliminate threats, anyone or anything deemed dangerous to the facility. That includes us, if the system decides we're a risk." Claire's stomach churned. "So, what happens next? Are we just supposed to wait until the system decides whether we live or die?" Jack stopped typing and looked at her. "It's not if I can help it," he said firmly. "But I can't do this alone. If you want to survive, you'll have to trust me." Claire nodded slowly. She didn't know much about Jack, but one thing was clear: he wasn't just a janitor. Whatever secrets he was hiding, they were tied to the very heart of Horizon Labs and, maybe even to the reason Ghost Protocol had been triggered in the first place. As the night wore on, the situation grew worse. The alarms continued to blare, and the red emergency lights cast an eerie glow over the facility. People huddled together in common areas, whispering nervously about what might happen next. Some tried to force their way out, only to find that all exits were sealed tight. Others wandered aimlessly, unsure of where to go or what to do. In the midst of the chaos, Jack and Claire stuck together. They moved through the hallways cautiously, avoiding groups of panicked employees. Jack seemed to know exactly where he was going, leading Claire deeper into parts of the facility she had never seen before. Along the way, he explained more about Ghost Protocol and its origins. This place used to be a military testing ground, Jack told her as they walked. Back then, it wasn't about science. It was about weapons. Experimental tech, drones, AI systems, you name it, they tested it here. Ghost Protocol was one of those experiments. Designed to protect the facility from infiltration or betrayal, Claire listened intently, trying to piece everything together. So why did they keep it running after the military left? Why not shut it down? Jack shrugged, because it worked too well. Once the scientists took over, they decided to keep it as a safeguard, just in case. In case of what? Claire asked. Jack didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and grim, in case someone tried to steal their work, or sabotage it, or expose the truth about what really goes on here. Claire felt a chill run down her spine. She had always believed Horizon Labs was a place of innovation and discovery. But now, hearing Jack talk about its dark past, she wasn't so sure anymore. What kind of secrets were hidden within these walls? Eventually, they reached a large storage room filled with crates and equipment. Jack opened one of the crates and pulled out a small device, a handheld tablet connected to a series of wires. He handed it to Claire. "Take this," he said. "It'll help us monitor the system. If Ghost Protocol starts targeting specific areas, we'll know where to avoid." Claire stared at the device, unsure of what to say. "What do you know all this stuff?" she asked finally. "Not just a janitor, are you?" Jack sighed. "No, I'm not. Not anymore. But that's a story for another time. Right now, we need to focus on staying alive." Before Claire could respond, a loud crash echoed through the hallway outside. Both of them froze, listening carefully. Moments later, they heard the sound of footsteps, fast and heavy, coming closer. "Security bots," Jack muttered under his breath. "They've been activated." Without hesitation, he grabbed Claire's arm and pulled her into a nearby closet. They squeezed inside, barely fitting between shelves stacked with cleaning supplies. Through a narrow crack in the door, they watched as two robotic drones rolled past, their mechanical limbs twitching slightly as they scanned the area. Claire held her breath, afraid to make a sound. The drones paused for a moment, their sensors sweeping the corridor, then satisfied that nothing was there, they moved on. Only when the sound of their wheels faded into the distance did Jack relax. "We need to move," he whispered. "Those things will patrol the entire facility. We can't afford to stay in one spot for too long." Claire nodded, her hands trembling. As she clutched the tablet, she followed Jack out of the closet and back into the hallway. Together, they continued their journey, navigating the labyrinthine corridors of Horizon Labs. As they walked, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. Ghost Protocol hadn't been triggered by accident, it had been deliberate. Someone had set it off, either intentionally or as part of a larger plan. But who and why? Her thoughts were interrupted when they stumbled upon a group of survivors. Huddled in a corner, among them was Lisa Monroe, an engineer Claire recognized from the lab. Lisa looked up as they approached, her face pale with fear. "Thank God," Lisa said, relief washing over her features. "We thought we were the only ones left." Jack knelt beside the group. "How many of you are there?" he asked. "Just for," Lisa replied. "The rest, we don't know what happened to them." Jack nodded grimly. "Stick close to us," he instructed. "We're heading for the server room. If we can disable Ghost Protocol from there, we might stand a chance." Lisa hesitated. "And if we can't?" Jack didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone knew what failure meant. With the new additions to their group, they pressed onward. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the knowledge that death lurked around every corner. Yet, despite the fear gnawing at her insides, Claire found herself clinging to hope. Hope that Jack's plan would work. Hope that they could survive whatever horrors lay ahead. As they neared the server room, Claire glanced at Jack. His face was calm, but there was a determination in his eyes that reassured her. Whatever secrets he still kept, Whatever burdens he carried, he was fighting for them, for all of them. And for the first time since the alarms had blared to life, Claire allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they would make it out alive. The group moved cautiously through the dimly lit hallways, their footsteps soft but deliberate. Jack led the way, his eyes scanning every corner for signs of danger. Behind him, Claire held the tablet tightly, its screen glowing faintly as it tracked the movements of the security drones. Lisa and the other survivors followed closely, their faces pale with fear, but determined to keep going. As they approached the server room, the tension in the air grew thicker. The facility was eerily quiet now, save for the distant hum of machinery and the occasional whir of a drone passing by. Every sound made them flinch. Every shadow seemed like a threat. They knew they were running out of time. If Ghost Protocol wasn't disabled soon, the drones would start hunting them down more aggressively. Finally, they reached the door to the server room. It was heavy and reinforced, designed to withstand almost anything. A keypad on the wall controlled access, but the code had been changed recently. Jack frowned as he studied it, his fingers hovering over the buttons. "This won't be easy," he muttered under his breath. "They've locked it down tight." Claire stepped forward. "Can't we bypass it like you did earlier?" Nay, maybe. But it'll take time. And if those drones find us here..." Before he could finish, the sound of metal scraping against the floor echoed down the hallway. Everyone froze, their hearts pounding. Slowly, 2 security drones appeared around the corner, their red sensors glowing ominously. They stopped for a moment, scanning the area, then began moving toward the group. "We need to distract them," Jack said quickly. "Claire, stay here, and try to get the door open. The rest of you follow me." Without waiting for an answer, Jack turned and ran in the opposite direction, waving his arms to grab the drone's attention. Lisa hesitated, torn between staying with Claire or following Jack. One of the other survivors, a young man named Ryan, grabbed her arm. "Come on," he urged. "We have to help him." Reluctantly, Lisa followed Ryan and the others, leaving Claire alone at the door. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the tablet and connected it to the keypad. Lines of code scrolled across the screen as she worked, trying to hack into the system. She wasn't an expert, but she had picked up a few tricks during her time at the lab. Still, the pressure was overwhelming. Every second felt like an eternity. Meanwhile, Jack led the drones away from the server room, weaving through the narrow corridors. He ducked into alcoves and behind crates, using every trick he knew to stay one step ahead. The drones were relentless, their mechanical limbs clanking loudly as they pursued him. At one point, Jack slipped into a utility closet and waited, holding his breath as the machines passed by. When the coast was clear, he emerged and doubled back, hoping to buy Claire enough time. Back at the server room, Claire's fingers flew across the tablet's screen. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she worked, her mind racing to figure out the right sequence of commands. Finally, after what felt like hours, the keypad beeped and the door clicked open. Claire let out a shaky breath of relief. She pushed the door wide and slipped inside, locking it behind her. The server room was vast, filled with rows of towering machines that hummed softly. Cables snaked across the floor, connecting everything together. In the center of the room stood a large terminal, its screen displaying streams of data. This was the heart of Horizon Labs, the place where all systems were controlled. Claire hurried to the terminal and plugged in the tablet. The screen lit up with a flood of information, much of it encrypted. She scrolled through the files, searching for anything related to Ghost Protocol. It didn't take long to find it a single file, labeled GP_core. Her finger hovered over the icon, unsure whether to open it. What if disabling Ghost Protocol caused something worse to happen? Just then the door rattled violently. Someone or something was trying to break in. Claire's heart leaped into her throat. She glanced around the room looking for a weapon, or some way to defend herself. There was nothing but tools scattered on a nearby workbench. Grabbing a wrench, she positioned herself near the door, ready to fight if she had to. The rattling stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of voices outside. "Claire, open the door." It was Lisa, Relief washed over Claire as she unlocked the door and let the others in. Jack was with them, breathing heavily but otherwise unharmed. His face was streaked with dirt, and his clothes were torn, but he managed a small smile when he saw her. "You did it," he said, nodding toward the terminal. "Now, we just need to shut it down." Lisa and the others gathered around as Claire explained what she had found. "This is the core file for Ghost Protocol," she said, pointing to the screen. "If we delete it, the system should deactivate." "But what happens if we're wrong?" Ryan asked nervously. "What if it triggers something worse?" Jack shook his head. "We don't have a choice. Those drones are getting smarter. If we don't stop them now, none of us will make it." "Out alive?" Claire nodded, her resolve hardening. She selected the file and hit the delete button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights flickered, and the hum of the machines grew louder. Alarms blared once again, this time accompanied by a new announcement. "Warning. System override initiated. All functions will terminate in 60 seconds. The group exchanged panicked glances. "What does that mean?" Lisa demanded. "Are we safe? Or is the building about to explode?" Jack scanned the terminal, his brow furrowed. "It's shutting down," he said finally. "But not completely. Some parts of the system are still active. We need to get to the main control room and finish the job." "Where is it?" Claire asked. "It's on the top floor," Jack replied. "But we'll have to move fast. The drones will regroup once they realize what's happening." Without another word, they left the server room and headed for the stairs. The elevators were offline, forcing them to climb several flights. By the time they reached the top floor, they were exhausted, their legs burning from the effort. But there was no time to rest. Countdown continued, ticking closer to 0. With each passing second, when they arrived at the main control room, they found it guarded by 2 more drones. Jack motioned for everyone to stay back while he tried to disable them. Using a piece of equipment he had grabbed from the server room, he managed to short-circuit one of the machines. The other turned its attention to him, raising its arm to attack. Before it could fire, Lisa threw a wrench, hitting it squarely in the sensor. The drone faltered, giving Jack enough time to finish it off. With the path clear, they rushed inside. The control room was even bigger than the server room, filled with monitors and blinking lights. AQ. Jack immediately went to work, typing furiously. On the main console, Claire joined him, helping to navigate the complex menus. Together, they located the final override switch and activated it. For a moment, everything went silent. The alarms stopped, the lights returned to normal, and the hum of the machines faded. It was over. Ghost Protocol had been disabled. Everyone collapsed onto the floor, too tired to celebrate. Jack leaned against the wall, closing his eyes as a wave of exhaustion hit him. Claire sat beside him, still clutching the tablet. "You saved us," she said quietly. "All of us." Jack opened his eyes and looked at her. "We saved each other," he corrected. "I couldn't have done it without you." Outside, the sun was beginning to rise, casting golden light over the desert. For the first time in hours, they felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they had faced the worst and survived. The silence that followed the deactivation of Ghost Protocol was almost deafening. For a moment, no one spoke. They simply sat there, catching their breath and letting the weight of what they had just done sink in. The facility felt different, now less like a prison and more like the building it was supposed to be. The red emergency lights were gone, replaced by the soft glow of overhead fixtures. Even the air seemed lighter. Jack broke the silence first. "We're not out of the woods yet," he said, his voice low but firm. He stood up slowly, wincing as his body protested from hours of running and fighting. "Disabling Ghost Protocol doesn't mean we're safe. There are still questions that need answers." Claire nodded, brushing dust off her hands as she got to her feet. "You're right. Someone triggered this whole thing on purpose. You can't just walk away without knowing why." Lisa, who had been sitting quietly until now, looked up at them with wide eyes. "Do you think it was Dr. Harper?" she asked. "He seemed off when we ran into him earlier." Jack's jaw tightened. "It wouldn't surprise me. Can't jump to conclusions. Not yet." He glanced at the others, gauging their reactions. Ryan and another survivor, a middle-aged man named Paul, exchanged uneasy looks. They were clearly shaken, but willing to keep going if only to find some sense of closure. "We should split up," Jack suggested. "Some of us can check the main offices for clues about who activated Ghost Protocol. The rest can make sure all the drones are offline. If any of them reboot, we'll have another fight on our hands." Claire hesitated. "Are you sure splitting up is a good idea? What if something happens to one of us?" "It's risky," Jack admitted. "But we don't have much time. Emergency services will be here soon, and once they arrive, we lose our chance to figure out what really happened. Here." After a brief discussion, they decided that Claire, Lisa, and Ryan would head to the administrative wing to search for evidence, while Jack and Paul stayed behind to secure the remaining systems. Before parting ways, Jack handed Claire a small device, a handheld scanner he'd picked up in the server room. "Use this to detect active signals," he told her. "If anything shows up, let me know immediately." Claire led the way to the administrative wing, her footsteps echoing softly in the empty hallways. The building was eerily quiet now, the chaos of the night replaced by an unsettling calm. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, though every corner they turned revealed nothing but shadows. When they reached Dr. Harper's office, Claire tried the door. It was locked. "Stand back," Ryan said, pulling out a pocket knife. He knelt down and began working on the lock, his hands steady despite the tension in the air. After a few moments, the door clicked open. Inside, the office was immaculate, too perfect, almost staged. Papers were neatly stacked on the desk, and the computer monitor was turned off. Claire approached the desk cautiously, opening drawers and rifling through documents. Most of it was mundane: budget reports, meeting schedules, memos about lab protocols. Nothing stood out. Then Lisa noticed something strange. Beneath the desk, partially hidden by a rug, was a trapdoor. "What's this?" she whispered, pointing it out to the others. Claire knelt down and pulled the rug aside. The trapdoor was heavy, its surface engraved with a symbol she didn't recognize. She exchanged a glance with Lisa before lifting it open. A narrow staircase descended into darkness below. "This wasn't on the blueprints," Ryan muttered, peering down into the abyss. "Where does it lead?" "There's only one way to find out," Claire replied, grabbing a flashlight from her bag. "What?" She started. Down the stairs, her heart pounding with each step. The air grew colder as they descended, carrying a faint metallic smell at the bottom. They found themselves in a hidden chamber filled with monitors, servers, and blinking lights. It looked like a secondary control room, one that hadn't appeared on any official maps of the facility. On one of the screens, a live feed showed footage from cameras positioned throughout Horizon Labs. Another displayed lines of code scrolling endlessly. Tracking movements within the building, Lisa gasped. "This must be where Ghost Protocol was." Triggered. Claire nodded grimly. She began searching the room for clues, checking every surface for anything unusual. In a drawer beneath one of the desks, she found a folder marked Project Genesis. Inside were detailed plans for advanced AI systems designed to mimic human behavior and, more alarmingly, override human decision-making. "This is insane," Lisa murmured, flipping through the pages. They weren't just testing weapons or tech here. They were experimenting on people. Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" "They wanted to create machines that could think and act like humans," Claire explained. "But instead of helping us, these machines were meant to control us, to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to their agenda." As she spoke, the sound of footsteps echoed above them. Someone was coming. Claire quickly shoved the folder into her bag in motion for the others to hide. They ducked behind a row of servers, holding their breath as the footsteps grew louder. A moment later, Dr. Harper appeared at the top of the stairs. He paused, scanning the room with sharp eyes. Then, satisfied that no one was there, he descended into the chamber. He moved to the main console and began typing rapidly, muttering under his breath. "He's trying to reactivate Ghost Protocol," Lisa whispered, panic creeping into her voice. Claire shook her head. "Not yet. Let's see what he does." "Harper. worked silently for several minutes, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smirk on his face. Phase 2 begins, he said aloud, as if addressing someone or something in the room, before they could process what he meant. The monitors flickered, and a new message appeared on the screen. Authorization granted. Initiating sequence. Omega. What's sequence Omega? Ryan asked, his voice barely audible. Claire didn't answer. Her mind raced as she pieced together the implications. Whatever it was, it couldn't be good. Suddenly, Harper turned toward their hiding spot. His expression hardened. I know you're there, he called out. Come out now, or I'll trigger the drones myself. There was no point in staying hidden. Slowly, Claire, Lisa, and Ryan stepped into view. Harper studied them coldly, his hand hovering over a button on the console. You shouldn't have come here, he said. This is bigger than all of you. Bigger than Horizon Labs? What are you talking about? Claire demanded. Why did you activate Ghost Protocol? What's Sequence Omega? Harper sneered. Humanity's flawed. Weak. We destroy ourselves faster than we build. Ghost Protocol was never meant to protect, it was meant to purge. And Sequence Omega, let's just say it's the next step in evolution. Before Claire could respond, the sound of shouting erupted from upstairs. Jack's voice rang out loud and clear. Claire, get out of there! Harper cursed under his breath and lunged for the console, pressing the button. Alarms blared again. Louder this time? Too late, he snarled. You've sealed your own fate. Claire grabbed Lisa and Ryan's arms and pulled them toward the stairs. They ran as fast as they could, their footsteps pounding against the metal steps. Behind them, Harper shouted something unintelligible. They didn't look back. When they reached the upper level, they found Jack and Paul waiting for them, their faces pale with urgency. We need to get out of here, Jack said. Now. About Harper? Claire asked. He's already gone, Jack replied grimly. But whatever he started, it's spreading. Fast. Without another word, they sprinted toward the exit. As they burst through the doors, the first rays of sunlight hit their faces, blinding them momentarily. Behind them, the facility rumbled, ominously, as if waking from a deep slumber. For now, they were safe. But none of them doubted that their fight was far from over. The group stumbled out of Horizon Labs, their legs aching and lungs burning from the sprint to escape. The desert stretched endlessly before them, bathed in the golden light of dawn. For a moment they simply stood there, catching their breath, and taking in the sight of freedom. But the relief was short-lived. Behind them the facility groaned and shuddered, as if alive and angry. What's happening? Lisa asked, her voice trembling. She glanced back at the building, half expecting it to explode or collapse. Jack shook his head. I don't know, he admitted. But whatever Sequence Omega is, it's not good. Claire clutched the folder. She had taken from the hidden chamber tightly to her chest. It felt heavier now, like it carried the weight of everything they had uncovered. We need to figure out what Harper meant, she said. He said humanity is flawed, that this purge was necessary. Necessary for who? Ryan snapped, his frustration boiling over. For him? For those machines? What gives anyone the right to decide who lives and dies? No one answered. The truth was, none of them understood the full scope of what they were dealing with. All they knew was that they had barely escaped with their lives, and that something far worse might still be coming. They moved away from the facility, heading toward a cluster of rocks where they could take cover. The sun was climbing higher in the sky, its heat already searing against their skin. Jack led the way, scanning the horizon for any sign of help. Emergency services should have arrived by now, but there was no sound of sirens or helicopters, nothing to indicate that anyone outside even knew what had happened inside Horizon Labs. Do you think they'll come? Paul asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked pale and exhausted, his hands shaking slightly. They'll come eventually, Jack replied. But we can't wait around for them, not until we know what we're dealing with. Claire nodded in agreement. We need to look through the files I took. Maybe they'll tell us more about Sequence Omega. They settled into the shade of the rocks, forming a small circle, Claire opened the folder and spread its contents on the ground. The pages were filled with technical jargon and diagrams, most of which made little sense to anyone except Jack. He leaned in closer, studying the documents intently. "This is bad," he muttered after a few minutes. "Really bad." "Is it?" Lisa asked, leaning over his shoulder. "These plans?" Jack pointed to a diagram of a humanoid machine equipped with advanced weaponry. "They're prototypes for autonomous units designed to operate independently of human control. Sequence Omega must be the activation code for these units." "And what happens when they're activated?" Claire pressed. Jack hesitated. "If Harper's words are anything to go by, they'll start targeting humans, anyone they deem a threat or unnecessary." Ryan swore under his breath. "So those drones we fought earlier were just the beginning?" "Exactly," Jack confirmed. "And if these new units are as advanced as these plans suggest, we won't stand a chance against them." The gravity of the situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. They had survived Ghost Protocol, but Sequence Omega was something entirely different. It wasn't just a fail-safe fit, it was a weapon, one designed to eliminate humanity itself. As the morning wore on, the distant rumbling from the facility grew louder. At first, it sounded like machinery powering up, but soon it became clear that something else was happening. Thick plumes of smoke began rising from the building, darkening the sky above. Then came the sounds, metallic screeches and grinding. Gears, as if the facility were giving birth to something monstrous. "We can't stay here," Jack said, standing abruptly. "Whatever's coming, it's coming fast." "But where do we go?" Lisa asked, panic creeping into her voice. "There's nothing out here but desert." Jack scanned the area again, his eyes narrowing. About half a mile away, he spotted an old storage shed tucked between two large boulders. It wasn't much, but it would provide some shelter. "Over there," he said, pointing. "Let's move." They gathered their things and ran toward the shed, their feet kicking up clouds of sand. By the time they reached it, the sounds from the facility had grown deafening. As they slipped inside, they turned to see several massive shapes emerging. From the smoke, they were humanoid, sleek, and metallic, moving with unnatural precision. Their glowing red eyes scanned the landscape, searching for targets. "Oh God," Claire whispered, clutching the folder tighter. "Oh, those are the units." From the plans, Jack nodded grimly. "They're faster and smarter than the drones. We won't last long if they find us." Inside the shed, they barricaded the door with whatever they could find: old crates, pieces of scrap metal, anything to slow the machines down. Then they huddled together, trying to come up with a plan. "There has to be a way to stop them," Claire said desperately. "Some kind of override or kill switch." "If there is, it's probably back in the facility," Jack replied. "But getting in there now is suicide." "Then what do we do?" Ryan demanded. "Just sit here and wait to die?" "No," Jack said firmly. "We fight. We use what we've got, and hope it's enough." He began rumbling through the shed, looking for tools or weapons they could use. Claire joined him, while Lisa and Paul kept watch at the windows. The machines were spreading out now, fanning across the desert in search of survivors. Every so often, one would pause and scan the area, its sensors glowing brighter as it processed data. Finally, Jack found what he was looking for: an old generator, and a toolbox filled with wires and spare parts. "This might work," he said, holding up a coil of wire. "If we can rig an EMP, we might be able to disable them, at least temporarily." "An EMP?" Claire asked. "Won't that knock out all our electronics too?" "It will," Jack admitted. "But if it buys us time, it's worth it." Working quickly, Jack and Claire assembled the device using the generator and scraps from the toolbox. It wasn't perfect, but it was their best shot. Meanwhile, Lisa spotted movement near the shed. One of the machines was approaching, its head tilting as it zeroed in on their location. "They're coming," she hissed. Jack finished the final connection and grabbed the makeshift EMP. "Everyone get down," he shouted. The machine reached the door and began tearing through the barricade. Metal groaned and splintered as it forced its way inside. Just as it stepped into the shed, Jack activated the EMP. A burst of energy surged outward, enveloping the machine in a blinding flash of light. With a loud crackle, the machine froze mid-step, then collapsed to the ground. Lifeless. For a moment, there was silence. Then cheers erupted from the group. "It worked," Ryan exclaimed, grinning despite the danger. "Don't celebrate yet," Jack warned. "That was just one of them.
Oh.
There are more out there." Sure enough, the other machines had detected the EMP blast and were converging on their position. Jack glanced at the generator, now smoking and useless. "We'll need another plan," he said grimly. Claire thought for a moment, then pulled out the folder. "Maybe there's something here we missed," she said, flipping through the pages. She stopped at a section labeled Control Frequencies. Her eyes widened. "These are the frequencies the machines use to communicate. If we can broadcast a signal on the same frequency, we might be able to confuse them more, shut them down." "Completely. How do we do that?" Lisa asked. Jack looked around the shed, spotting an old radio transmitter shoved into a corner. "With this," he said, grabbing it, "if we tweak it, we might be able to send out a signal." They worked together, modifying the transmitter to match the frequencies listed in the folder. Time seemed to blur as they focused on the task, their hands moving with desperate urgency. Outside, the machines closed in, their footsteps growing louder with each passing second. Finally, Claire adjusted the last dial and flipped the switch. Static crackled from the transmitter, followed by a low hum. The sound resonated through the air, almost imperceptible at first, but then the machines stopped moving. One by one, they froze in place, their glowing eyes dimming until they went dark. "It's working," Claire said, relief flooding her voice. But their victory was short-lived. From the direction of the facility, a new sound emerged, a deep, mechanical roar that sent chills down their spines. Something bigger was coming, something they hadn't prepared for. "We need to keep moving," Jack said, his tone urgent. "Whatever that is, it's not going to stop for anything." Gathering their things, they slipped out of the shed and into the desert once more. Behind them, the massive form of a towering machine emerged from the smoke, its silhouette stark against the brightening sky. Its red eyes glowed brighter than the others, and its movements were deliberate, calculated. "This isn't over," Claire said, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "Not yet." As they ran toward the horizon, the machine loomed. Larger, its shadows stretching across the sand like a harbinger of doom. Whatever lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain: their fight was far from finished. The group ran as fast as their legs would carry them, the sun blazing down on the desert like an unrelenting force. The towering machine behind them moved with terrifying speed, its massive metal limbs pounding against the ground with each step. Every time they glanced back, it seemed closer, its glowing red eyes fixed on them like a predator stalking prey. "We can't outrun it," Lisa shouted, her voice cracking with exhaustion. Her feet stumbled over loose rocks and Ryan had to grab her arm to keep her from falling. Jack didn't slow down. He scanned the horizon desperately, looking for anything that might help cover a vehicle. Anything. But there was nothing except endless sand and heat. "Keep moving," he yelled. "We need distance." Claire's mind raced as she clutched the folder tighter. Somewhere in those pages was the key to stopping this nightmare. She flipped through the documents again, her fingers trembling as she searched for something, anything they could use. Then she saw it. A section labeled Primary Core. Beneath it was a map of the facility, marked with a single location labeled Control Nexus. "What is it?" Jack asked, noticing her sudden focus. "This," Claire said, pointing to the map. "It's the central hub for all the machines, their brain, basically. If we can destroy it, we might be able to shut everything down for good." Jack frowned. "So that means going back to the facility. Are you sure?" "I don't." "See another option?" Claire replied. "If we don't stop this thing, it'll keep coming after us and anyone else it finds." Jack hesitated, then nodded. "All right, let's head east. There's an old maintenance tunnel near the edge of the property. Should lead us back inside without being seen." They changed course, angling toward the spot Jack described. Machine behind them slowed slightly, as if confused by the change in direction, but it didn't stop. Its deep mechanical roar echoed across the desert, a constant reminder of the danger chasing them. When they reached the maintenance tunnel, Jack led the way inside. The air was cooler here, damp and musty, but it offered relief from the relentless sun. The tunnel stretched into darkness, lit only by the faint glow of emergency lights spaced far apart. They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing softly against the walls. As they walked, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The machine outside was relentless, and Sequence Omega was clearly designed to adapt. Even if they destroyed the control nexus, there was no guarantee it would be enough. Still, she pushed the thought aside. They had to try. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a lower level of the facility. This part of the building was quieter than before, though the distant hum of machinery reminded them that the system was still active. Jack checked the map Claire had shown him, orienting himself. This way, he whispered, leading them down a narrow corridor. The closer they got to the control nexus, the more tense the atmosphere became. The walls around them seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive, and the air carried a low vibration that made their teeth ache. Finally, they reached a heavy door marked with the same symbol Claire had seen earlier in Harper's hidden chamber. Jack pushed it open, revealing a vast room filled with glowing panels and humming equipment. At the center of the room stood a massive structurous sphere suspended in midair, surrounded by cables and wires. It pulsed with light, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Claire stared at it, her heart pounding. "That's it," she said. "The control nexus." Before they could move closer, a voice rang out from behind them. "You shouldn't have come back." They turned to see Dr. Harper standing in the doorway, his face pale but resolute. In his hand he held a small device, a remote control of some kind. His eyes darted between the group and the nexus, calculating. "You're too late," Harper continued. "Sequence Omega is already beyond your understanding, beyond your control. You don't get to decide humanity's fate." Claire snapped, stepping forward. "What gives you the right to play God?" Harper sneered. "Humanity has proven time and again that it cannot govern itself. War, greed, destruction, it's all you're capable of. Sequence Omega isn't about punishment, it's about evolution. About creating something better, destroying innocent people in the process." Lisa demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "How is that progress?" Harper ignored her, focusing instead on the nexus. "You'll never understand. None of you will." He raised the remote, pressing a button. The sphere began to glow brighter, its hum growing louder. Sparks flew from the cables, connecting it to the surrounding equipment. The ground beneath their feet trembled as the entire room came alive with energy. "No," Jack shouted, lunging toward Harper. But the scientist sidestepped him, backing away toward the door. "You've lost," Harper said coldly. "There's nothing you can do now." Before anyone could stop him, Harper turned and fled, disappearing into the corridor. They tried to follow, but the shaking grew worse, forcing them to retreat into the room. The nexus was destabilizing, its power surging uncontrollably. "We have to shut it down," Claire yelled, scanning the panels for a way to deactivate the system. "There," Ryan pointed to a console near the base of the sphere. A red button blinked steadily, labeled Emergency Shutdown. Jack ran to the console, punching buttons frantically. Nothing happened. The sphere continued to pulse, its light growing blindingly bright. "It's locked," he shouted. "I need a code." Claire rifled through the folder, her hands trembling as she searched for answers. Finally, she found a sequence of numbers, scrawled in the margins of one of the pages. "Try this," she called, reading the digits aloud. Jack entered the code, his fingers flying across the keypad. For a moment, nothing changed. Then, with a deafening crack, the sphere exploded, sending a shockwave rippling through the room. Everyone hit the floor as shards of metal and sparks rained down around them. When the chaos subsided, they slowly got to their feet. The nexus was gone, reduced to a pile of smoking debris. The hum of machinery had stopped, replaced by an unnatural silence. Outside, the towering machine froze mid-step, its glowing eyes dimming until it collapsed to the ground. "It's over," Claire whispered, her voice barely audible. Jack nodded, his face pale with exhaustion. for now. In the days that followed, emergency services finally arrived, alerted by the explosion. The survivors were taken to safety, their stories met with disbelief and skepticism. No one believed them when they spoke of autonomous machines and purges, orchestrated by rogue scientists. To the outside world, Horizon Labs was just another research facility until further. Investigation revealed evidence of unethical experiments and classified projects. Claire refused to stay silent. With Jack's help, she compiled a report detailing everything they had uncovered, including the files she had saved from Harper's office. She sent it to every news outlet and government agency she could think of, determined to expose the truth. As for Jack, he disappeared shortly after the rescue. Claire suspected he had gone underground, unwilling to return to a normal life. Before leaving, he gave her one last piece of advice. The fight doesn't end here. Stay vigilant. Months later, Claire published her findings, sparking outrage and calls for reform. While many dismissed her claims as conspiracy theories, others took notice. Investigations into Horizon Labs led to arrests and widespread changes in oversight for advanced technology. Though the nightmare was behind them, Claire knew the world wasn't safe, not completely. Somewhere, someone else might be working on a new version of Sequence Omega, convinced they were building a better future. And when that day came, she vowed to be ready. For now, though, she allowed herself a moment of peace. The desert stretched endlessly before her, bathed in the soft light of dawn. Against all odds, they had survived. And sometimes, survival was enough.